Hello, everybody. This is me, Nate DOG, and you know I had to log in and talk about the Lions game last night. So I'm going to be a little different, or at least take a little different tact on this situation, because the thing with the referees is going to be sliced, diced, viewed, you name it. They're going to do it between social media, print media, the internet, social media, every type of media. Every talking head with half a brain and a full opinion is going to say something about it. And so that's not going to be where I'm coming from. Except for you outsiders who are not aware about Lions football, this is Lions football. There's no Lions football without officials' controversy. Matter of fact, the NFL's rule of a catch was designed on a catch that Megatron had a few years ago, where he made the catch, but the ref said, didn't happen. Same thing with Dez Bryant in a game in Dallas against Detroit, where he didn't have a catch, but the ref said, it happened. So welcome to Lions football, controversy style. They're used to it. So that being said, we'll get off that. A lot of people are thinking that Dan Campbell should have just played safe, conventional wisdom, got the 2 points. Well, if you believe that, you don't know how Dan Campbell coaches. Dan Campbell, he is a risk taker. I won't call him Riverboat Ron, but I'm not going to call him Safety Dan either. He likes to go for it. This has been his style. This is a man who went for it on his own 28-yard line, and they got a 30-some yard pass completion on a fake punt early in the game, deep in his own territory. This is what he does. And of course, when you do things like that, the risk is great, but the reward is greater. This is how Dan Campbell coaches. Now, you also have to understand that Dan Campbell walked into this game saying, we're going to win it, or we're going to lose it in 60 minutes. We ain't doing overtime. We're going to win it or lose it in 60 minutes. And he wanted no doubt about this game. Now, let's also look at some other things. Let's look at seeding and where the Lions were. Now, the Lions, the 49ers, and the Eagles had identical records. But the 49ers were number one because they held all the tiebreakers on everybody. The Eagles were number two because they held a tiebreaker on the Lions. And both teams had the tiebreaker on Detroit. So for Detroit to be the number one seed, then basically the Lions would have had to win out, and both of those teams above them had to lose a game. Looking at the 49ers schedule and looking at the Eagles schedule, that was going to be an improbability. Now, anything can happen on any given Sunday in the National Football League, but I do know one thing. When you got good teams who have a lot on the line and want to accomplish things, they're probably going to take care of business. So the chances of the 49ers losing a game to two soft teams and the chances of the Eagles losing a game to two soft teams was probably very, very slim. So the Lions were playing with house money. They already got the third position locked. They couldn't finish lower than third. So why not go all out to try to win this game? Now, if the game got to the point where he said it's going to be overtime, in this situation that he was in, they marched down the field, scored the touchdown. He had already decided, not at that moment, he decided before the game started that, hey, if I'm in a situation to win the game as opposed to overtime, I'm going for the win. He already decided that. And I'm not mad at that. Here's why. Number one, an extra period of overtime opens up your players to another period of possibly getting hurt. The last thing you want is your quarterback, your star receiver, your star defensive lineman, your star running backs to get hurt because you're playing an additional 10 minutes of football. Okay? And then on top of that, even if the Lions won, there was no guarantee that they were going to move up because, like I said before, the 49ers and the Eagles got patsies on their schedule left. Detroit had the toughest schedule of the three going into the final 3 weeks of the season, facing Minnesota twice and Dallas once. So now, They've lost the Dallas game. No matter how much spilled milk and no matter how much the commentators are going to say things, no matter how much social media is going to rock and roll with this, hey, Dallas won, Detroit lost, on to next week. Now, next week is the season finale, and the Lions are at home playing Minnesota. Now, it would be nice if the Lions got a home game win at Minnesota, but again, you have to look at, do we want short-term pleasure and long-term pain, or would we rather have short-term pain and long-term pleasure? If I'm Dan Campbell, this is when I'm not gambling. This is when I'm not having my starting quarterback play longer than a half. This is when I'm not going to have my starting running backs play a whole game. This is when I'm going to have that depth play and let them play the game out. Why? Because, again, the Lions, with that loss yesterday, barring the other two teams losing 2 games apiece, which is not going to happen, the Lions are seated in 3rd place. They have nothing to gain. They have nothing to lose either. So the game is semi-meaningless to Detroit. It means more to Minnesota. So Minnesota, who's already angry that the Lions beat them in their den and the Lions did the little skull chant after it was over, this team is going to be hot, heavy, and ready. The Lions have nothing to play for. Are the Lions going to be competitive? Yes, they're not going to roll over and die. But on the other hand, Minnesota's coming for blood. So why would the Lions sit up here and risk their best players knowing that they got bigger fish to fry? Why would they sit up here and risk it against a team that's mad and hungry? It makes more sense for Dan Campbell to sit some of his best players, or at least let them play enough to get some reps in. So what am I saying? Or you're telling me, well, dog, what are you saying? What I'm saying is this. There was a victory in that loss yesterday. And I'm not talking about a moral victory. I'm talking about, yes, the Lions lost. Now they know where they're going to be. So now that you know where you're going to be and you got a game in hand, now you can rest some of your starters. Guys won't get hurt. Because Lord knows the playoff is a one-and-done situation. I would hate to have to go into the playoffs knowing that my starting quarterback is probably hurt, or my wide receiver is injured, or my running backs are not feeling it, or my defensive players, which you're going to need those defensive players because the playoffs are about defense. You're going to need them hot, heavy, and ready. So, again, you can pick your poison. And like I said, I'm not going to get off into the referees and what they did or they didn't do. I'm just looking at it like this. I believe in playing the long-term game. And the long-term game is this. Campbell gambled, tried to win it. He lost. Now, what you do is, you're not going any higher than the 3rd. Play next game and get your mind right for the playoffs. But what do you think? Like, comment, subscribe. Let me know. In the meantime, this is Nate DOG, and Happy New Year.